You know, every one of you in this room is successful, or you wouldn't be here. And I hope each of you is looking to build on your success, build on your effectiveness, and perhaps some of what I can share from Peter Drucker and others, my own experience, will help you a little bit. So I retired at the end of 2018 after 42 years with Edward Jones. I started as an intern, actually, when I was a full-time MBA student at Washington University there in St. Louis. I was an intern in the research department. I thought I wanted to be a buy-side analyst. It's what my education was preparing me to do, and I learned three important things as an intern. One, love the industry. Fast-paced, changing all the time, had to be on your toes, pay attention. Two, love the firm. Values-based, had a business model that made sense. And three, I was a terrible analyst. So as soon as I graduated, I wanted to be on the client-facing part of our organization. I graduated, I trained, I got licensed, and Stacy and I moved out to Indiana, opened up the 200th branch for our firm. Let me share with you what is most important to me, and that is my family. Stacy and I have been married for 46 years. There you go. That's quite an accomplishment for Stace to put up with me that long. We have 3 kids. All of them are college educated, employed, married, and have children of their own. That is like 3 grand slams. We consider that to be quite an accomplishment. We've got 6 perfect grandchildren. Some of you can relate to that. They age 13 down to 5 months, and we're so very, very proud of them. So yeah, I started early in my professional career. This is a picture. Don't you love the black and white? Geez, we heard from photo sharing and Flickr and all the rest, and here I have a black and white photo. But it was 1977, and that was actually a picture of the group in our community, mostly bankers and attorneys, who came to our grand opening. That's me at the desk. Yeah, great hair. And Stacy, my wife, standing behind me. We started the 200th branch for the firm. It was at a time when we had maybe $5 or $6 million in revenue. We grew the place over time because we were gifted a great business model by both our founder as well as his son, Ted Jones. By the time that I had finished my career in 2018, we had 18,000 financial advisors, about $12 billion in revenue. Most importantly, we were serving 6.5, almost 7 million client households who had entrusted $1.5 trillion of their hard-earned savings to our care. So as Dave mentioned, today I'm going to focus a little bit on the teachings of Peter Drucker, the most, I would say, the preeminent scholar on the science of management in the world. He was an amazing individual. His book, The Effective Executive, is one that perhaps many of you have read. If you haven't, I would highly recommend it. It is a masterpiece to be sure, and every time I read it, I highlight some more. All the pages are colored now because there's just idea after idea after idea within its pages. Yeah, so we grew the firm. We did a lot of good things. I made a lot of mistakes. Hopefully I can help you today with some of the stories of what we did well and some of the things that we could have done better so that you can steer around those potholes instead of going right through them. Peter Drucker consulted with our firm for over 30 years. He described himself as an intermittent member of Edward Jones Senior Management. That was quite a compliment to our firm. There's Peter on the far left and myself. The other picture is when I had come out of my branch office after 8 years of building a successful practice. Shaking hands with Jack Phelan, who was a mentor to me. He was a very senior partner at our firm, but just a kind of a marker on the timeline. As was mentioned, Peter was not just a consultant to our firm, and I enjoyed that part of the relationship being a member of our management committee. But early on in my career, actually a couple years out of my branch, I had the opportunity to sit down with John Bachman, our managing partner, had my performance review. I thought we were done. It had been a good discussion. I got up to leave, and he said, "There is one more thing." I thought, "Oh no, what is this?" He said, "You're aware we consult with Peter Drucker?" I said, "Oh, absolutely." He said, "I want to make you aware that Peter and his wife Doris would like to become clients of the firm." I said, "Oh my gosh, what a compliment. Who is going to have responsibility for their account?" He said, "Well, that'd be you." So I realized at that moment in time I had the perfect opportunity to screw up the most important relationship we had at our firm. And I said, "John, I don't think I can do that. I'm not licensed in California where the Druckers lived." He said, "Oh, yes, you are." He had already taken care of that. So I went out, I met with Peter and Doris, and sat in those awful uncomfortable chairs that older individuals always have in their living rooms. And for an entire afternoon, we didn't talk about management at all. We talked about Peter and Doris and their hopes and their dreams and their children and their family and their estate plans and their investments, what they wanted to accomplish with both of their successes, and they were both brilliant and successful individuals. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. I worked with them for about 6 years, but at the end of the conversation that day, I said to Peter, "Peter, I would be honored if I could take you and Doris to dinner this evening." Peter had this delightful Austrian accent. He says, "Absolutely not." I thought, "Oh no, I've done something wrong." He says, "Doris has fixed meatloaf." And it's a Rockwell painting that's permanently imprinted in my mind of sitting at the Drucker kitchen table with Peter and Doris eating meatloaf. Salt of the earth people. Incredible intellect on both their parts. Exceptionally caring individuals. Much of Peter's writings talks about not just operating effectively, but giving back and taking care of the communities that we serve. That was very, very genuine. So let me kind of jump into some of what Peter's writings and his philosophy has taught us over the years. If you don't know it already, whether you're the CEO, the president, or in another role in your organizations, everything you do, everything you don't do, everything you say, everything you don't say is being watched, and it will be imitated. You are setting the example, so be sure that you're setting the example you want others to emulate. A story. I've always been a morning person. I've never been the smartest person in a room, not this one or any other one. So any success that I've had, I would attribute to working harder and longer, maybe a little smarter than other people, but certainly longer and harder. So when I became managing partner, I had already been with our firm for 29 years, had learned a lot, had been in some important roles and positions, but there was an awful lot yet that I needed to be able to do that it was unfamiliar or new to me as managing partner. So I continued what I had always done. I would get up at 5:15 in the morning without an alarm. I would be in the office by 6:15. My kids lovingly referred to that as Dad's half days. It was kind of 6 to 6, but it's what I wanted to do. I would also come into the office on Saturday mornings. I would park out in front of the office building, just walk in, put in 3 or 4 hours. It was quiet time, it was think time, it was my time. And in the evenings, Stacy and I, TV would be on, we had had dinner. I would sit down with my laptop, and if I had an idea, I would send an email. If I had a question, I would send an email. If I had a request, I would send an email. It was what I wanted to do. Our kids were grown, and that was how I wanted to be spending my time. Well, I didn't realize that members of my senior team were staying up late at night in fear that I would send them an email that they felt like they had to respond to immediately. Yeah, and I didn't realize that they were taking note of the fact that I was in the office on Saturday mornings. I always thought it was great that their cars were there too. I didn't realize any of that until a senior member, executive committee member, chief operating officer actually came to me and says, Jim, he says, you got to stop doing some things. I said, what's that? He said, those emails that you're sending at night, he said, you're keeping people up because they think they need to respond to them. I said, that's not my intent. He said, you come into the office on Saturday mornings. He says, everybody feels like they need to come into the office on Saturday mornings. I said, well, that's not my intent. He goes, yeah, but those are the impacts of the example you're setting. Ouch. So I continued to work on Saturday mornings, but I did it from my terminal at home. I had one. I didn't need to go into the office, and my car was no longer parked in the lot. I stopped sending those emails to my senior team. I sent them to myself instead so I could follow up with them in the morning and send them on during a more normal time. I had single-handedly destroyed any of their abilities to have a healthy work-life balance. And that was not at all my intention, but it was the outcome. You need to have some people that can pull you up a little short when you're doing something like that and point it out. So, you know, as an executive at your firm, you are expected to get the right things done, the big things done. And that comes down to how effective are you. These two questions, how do you think about your role and how can you build your effectiveness? That's what we're going to focus on for the next 15 minutes. Intelligence, creativity, knowledge are essential resources. Yep. But only effectiveness converts them into results. That's a Drucker-ism. That's a brilliant statement, by the way. So effective executives take all those resources, all that intellect, all that potential, and it converts it into action. And you know, at the end of the day, action is what we need to direct, instill, monitor, but perhaps not do an awful lot of it ourselves. I'll talk a bit more about that. As we walk through the habits of an effective executive, again, read the book or read it again. Drucker talks about 5 different habits, and they're important. The first one is effective executives know where their time goes. Now, you might say or think that you know where your time goes if you were asked. I was asked. I said, oh, I know where my time goes. It's 60% internal focused on the business, 20% on the community, 20% on the industry. Great. Well, there was an individual who served as a coach to me, especially important as I transitioned into the managing partner role, and he asked me this question, and I told him exactly what I just shared. He said, you might have somebody take a look at that for you. He said, why don't you have Ginny Martin was my executive assistant for 18 years. He said, have Ginny just kind of keep track of where your time is. I thought, okay, we'll do it, just so he stops talking about it. And what I found was that over 85% of my time was spent internally. 5 or 6% was spent on industry matters, and less than 5% was spent on the community. Not at all where my time, my efforts needed to be focused in order to guide the firm and move us toward our mission. I was completely wrong. And he said, you know what? It's a good thing to learn, but he said, have Jenny take a look at it about every 6 months because you're going to revert to the things that you like to do instead of the things that perhaps you should be doing. Second, effective executives focus on outward contribution. Now, as a CEO, those of you in the room who are president, CEO, lead the organization, you might say, well, my outward contribution is the overall performance of our firm. That doesn't help much. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help the people that are responsible to you. You need to define your deliverables. You need to be very specific on those things. You need to hold yourself accountable. One of the best ways to do that is to ask your senior team, hold me accountable. These are the things that I am going to deliver, my operating responsibilities. Mine were 3. The first was set the course, the leadership team's direction, and the overall vision for the organization. That's a big one, and it took a lot of time, but that was the first. The second was clarifying the firm's values, communicating and demonstrating them. And on this, I would remind you, as I did need to remind myself as well as my team, your video needs to match your audio. Now, that's not an original Jimism. I stole it from somebody. I wish I could give them credit. But your video needs to match your audio. What you say is what you need to align your actions and your activities to. If they are out of alignment, you have no credibility. So please pay attention to that. And the third was develop our management team and prepare the next generation of our leaders. Short story might help. Penny Pennington, as Dave mentioned, is our managing partner. When I became managing partner, part of what I knew we needed to do was to grow our leadership team, and to do that with people who had a client-facing responsibility and experience. So we looked to our field talent, who we had tested in a variety of ways. That's a story for another time. Penny was an individual that I invited to come from her office and join us in management. She's brilliant. She's innovative. We heard more about that this morning. She's an excellent communicator. She's just the whole package. But she didn't have experience in a couple of the larger, very important client experience impacting roles. So we very intentionally rotated Penny into those roles, where she couldn't bring expertise or experience, but she could bring her natural bent for innovation, her curiosity, and her terrific leadership skills. Those areas benefited, to be sure, from her leadership. She benefited from the leaders in those areas and their expertise and their knowledge, their experience in those areas. Penny didn't realize it at the time, but it was an intentional kind of a rotation. And when it came time for me to step aside, we did an internal search. We had 3 individuals who were all ready, to be sure. Penny was the best. She simply had it all. Build on your strengths. Yeah, and make your weaknesses irrelevant. Right out of Drucker's book. When I became managing partner, there were a lot of things I needed to learn. Jim Collins was coaching and mentoring us. Have a couple stories there, but one thing that Jim asked me was, he said, "Are you ready to step into the management or the managing partner role? What concerns, what worries you about that?" And I said, "Well, I'm concerned that I'm not very expert in 2 of the largest capital intensive areas of our firm, technology and operations, and I want to immerse myself in those to become expert." And he said, "Yeah, you may not want to do that." He referred instead to Drucker's teachings that said, look, focus on your strengths, build on those, make your weaknesses irrelevant, and do that by asking people to take on the things that you're not expert in, but that they are. He said, in those 2 areas, he said, exceptionally important to be sure, but he said, make sure you have people who are experienced, who are knowledgeable, whose judgment you can trust, and let them do the work. Wow. He saved me a lot of time with that advice, and it's exactly what I did. 4th is aim high. You set the aspirations for your organization. You do. You need to set them, you need to communicate them, you need to stay away from what is safe and what is easy, and strive to stretch the resources and the strengths of your organization to continuously build that client experience better, faster than your competitors. And the more successful your firm is, the more pressure you will feel to not change the business model, not change what it is that you're doing that has created your past success. One of my least favorite quotes, statements, I guess, is, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. No, break it. Fix it. Better, bigger, more creatively than before. Do not sit on your laurels. Your competition is not. Stay ahead of them, and don't ever get too comfortable with what you're doing and embrace it in a way that you're afraid to change it. When I became managing partner, 75% of our revenues were generated from a transaction pricing model. Activity and account drove revenue, and we had embraced that for 75 years. We were successful. We were married to it. It was part of who we were, or so we thought. The rest of the industry had moved to a fee-based kind of an approach where, based on the assets under care, you charge a very small percentage. And we didn't embrace that, partly because the rest of the industry had. That was a good reason not to, I guess, or good enough, we thought. Except we did some research because I was questioning why it was that we weren't able to successfully develop as rapidly as we wanted to the tens of millions of serious long-term individual investors that were in the marketplace into client relationships. And when we did the survey and we asked about their wants and their needs, referring to previous conversations this morning, we found that they preferred a fee-based relationship. Even at times, it would charge them more, but it was completely transparent and understandable. What you would charge, when you would charge, how you would charge, how much you would charge, and what value you would receive was perfectly clear. So with great controversy, I was the least popular person in our firm amongst the most veteran and most stubborn and most successful financial advisors for a period of months, if not years. But we developed what I think was an industry-leading fee-based platform and offered it as a choice to our clients. Didn't have to leave and change what you were doing, but if you would prefer this, we'd like to offer that to you. Major growth point for our firm. Today, 85% of the revenues of the firm are fee-based. And the old transaction revenue is still there. So this was net new growth. We listened to our clients. We listened to their wants and their needs. And we made the right decision, even though we knew it would be grossly unpopular and very controversial. People accused us of changing the culture. No, we didn't. We changed a business decision, and we offered choice where before there hadn't been any. So let's talk about making effective decisions. It's part of what you do as well. All decisions involve choice, or you don't really have a decision to make. If you can simply gather the facts, well, the decision is made. So when you are contemplating a decision, it's typically because there are alternatives. There are competing solutions. Start by identifying what's right, what's optimum, what's absolute best, knowing you're probably going to have to compromise a bit. And it's the decisions that have to degenerate into work if you're going to make progress. Make a decision. It has to become somebody's job, somebody's responsibility, with accountability, with measures and a time frame for accomplishment. But it's the disagreement during the decision process that energizes the innovation, energizes the creativity, surfaces the alternatives, and helps you to make the best decisions. Drucker has a fascinating chapter devoted just to that. So this is a favorite Druckerism as well. It's what gets measured gets done. You probably already know this, but if you have something important that your organization needs to accomplish, create an appropriate measure and report on it periodically, monthly, quarterly, whatever your reporting cycle might be. It raises the visibility. It very intentionally expresses the importance of that particular item, and it will focus the energy of the entire organization on getting it done. So a decision is a judgment. It's a choice between alternatives, and surfacing those is exceptionally important. So let me point out a couple more things, and then we're going to wrap up because I see that my time is running out. Your time tends to belong to everybody else. It's not a comfortable feeling, I know. You're programmed, you're scheduled. From 8 to 5 every day, my schedule was filled with meetings and speeches and coaching others and industry matters and community involvements. That's why I got in at 6:15. So I'd have that hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. Very important, and I guarded it very, very carefully. Yeah, you've got to think that through. You've got to think, where is the time going to come from for me to think? Because other people are going to fill your day, and you've got to be careful of that. You're going to be forced to keep operating unless you take positive action to change your work reality. You've all gotten to the point that you're successful, to be sure. You're in roles because you're take charge, get it done, complete important things, people, right? You wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. Well, that being the case, you've been operating for a long time. And as you move through your organization to larger, more complex responsibilities, you're going to find that you need to stop operating or cut it back significantly. One of the challenges when I became managing partner was that we'd become very bureaucratic. The decision process had slowed down. We simply couldn't get enough of the right things done quickly enough. I walked out of my office one morning. I had a meeting with a small group of people to find a line of people outside my office. 6 or 8 people. I asked my assistant, I said, Ginny, what, did I miss a meeting? She goes, no, they're each here to see you, one at a time. Well, my predecessor was a gifted micromanager who had taught his, I say that in a complimentary way, kind of, but he had taught his senior team not to finalize any important decisions without him being a part of that decision process. So, first gentleman came in, his first name was Ray. He was in charge of what we called our solutions group, all the products, all the services, all the marketing activities that our firm offered to our clients. And I said, Ray, what can I do for you today? He quickly described, he said, well, you know, we've got our marketing plan for the year in terms of all the internal promotions, marketing campaigns and whatnot that we would like to run. There were typically 3. He said, I want to run each of them by you with what it is we're going to focus on, what it is it's going to take to implement, how we're going to go about measuring those things, and get your okay before we execute. I said, Ray, do you like your plan? He said, I love my plan. I said, do you have the right people in the room when you developed it? He said, all of them. I said, do you have the measures in place to be able to tell you quickly and accurately whether it's having the desired effect or not? He said, yes. I said, tell me how it turns out. And he kind of looked at me. I said, I think we're done. And he stood up and he looked at me. He says, well, this is going to be great. I thought, it's going to be better. Yeah, he was asking me for a decision on things that he was far more expert in, far more experienced in than I was. I was slowing down the process. Guard against doing that. You'll slow down your organization, folks, if you don't raise yourself up to a leadership role instead of an operating role. You need to do a little less and lead a little more. Final story, and then I know I'm over my time, but I'd like to share this. Final note comes from Jim Collins. We were fortunate that he agreed to consult with us when we decided we needed to put together a 5-year plan. We had had a series of 1-year plans prior to that, very tactical, not meeting the needs of the firm in a rapidly changing industry and environment. So we went out to the Monkey Works, which is what he calls his office in Colorado. I said, we, our executive committee, there were 7 of us. And we sat down with Jim, and one of the first things he asked was, he said, what's your BHAG? Well, this is a term that you've heard. The big, hairy, audacious goal. It wasn't news to me. I had read all of his books, Good to Great, Built to Last. But we had never really thought about what our BHAG was. And he explained to us that it was important that we do, because this is a long-term aspiration for the firm. What it is that you're going to point, it's your North Star. Executive committee came away from that meeting with a lot of to-dos. One was to work on our BHAG. Jim said it'd take us weeks, if not months. We'd probably not get it right first, and we thought, no, we're pretty smart people. We can knock this out. Well, we worked on it at the next offsite. We thought we had it right, and we got it all wrong. We were focused internally, not on the externals that we should have been. It falls out from the answers, thoughtful answers to 3 questions. What can you be the best at in the world? What are you most passionate about? What gets you into the office every day all cranked up to do the work to serve your clients? And what drives your economic engine? So we thought this through, and what can we be the best at in the world? We thought that we could be the best in the world at knowing our clients as individuals, understanding their families, their businesses, identifying what's most important to them, and putting plans in place to accomplish those things. We thought we could be the best in the world at doing that. Our business model facilitates that. All our training, our tools, and our support was there to make that happen. What are we most passionate about? Initially, we said we were most passionate about growing the firm. Wrong. We're most passionate about helping our clients and our communities and leaving them better than we found them. Took us a long time to figure that out. And the third one actually created some internal angst. What drives your economic engine? You see, we have thousands of people who are in our operations area, our technology, our marketing, our supervision, our compliance areas, and all the rest. And they kind of thought they were driving the business of the firm. They were not. They were supporting the economic engine, which was the client-facing team. Our economic engine was a growing number of highly productive branch teams. And identifying that allowed us to identify our BHAG, to be the first choice of the serious long-term individual investors. So, you know, in conclusion, be the example for your employees in all that you do. They are watching. They're going to imitate you. That can be a tough pill because it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's not 8 to 5, Mondays to Fridays. Guard against continuing to do versus lead. You'll supercharge your organization and speed up the decision process. On Drucker's 5 habits, keep them simple. Make them relevant, whether you're a large organization or small. Remember, you are not in the role that you're in just to do some work. You're there to get the most important things done that will improve the client experience and deliver value to the folks that are depending upon you. So it's been delightful to be with you today. I appreciate your attention. Look forward to the next couple days. Thank you.